Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. I'm Robb Evans, and today I'm joined by Veronika Whyte. She's an expert in psychology, child development, and family wellness. Veronika is also the founder of Success Beyond Limits, and she's the host of the TV show called The Psychology of Us, where she helps people understand human behavior and build stronger, more resilient lives. Now, today, we're going to dive into how to foster mental toughness and resilience in kids and families and skills that serve us for life. So, Veronika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rob, for such a nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be on your Mental and Toughness Body Show.
Oh, that's the most polite thank you I've ever had on this show. You're very welcome. So, Veronika, first of all, like most of the work that you do is in the space of with kids. Now, obviously, I know that you've got a young daughter, but prior to her, what's your passion about wanting to help kids?
Thank you so much for the question, and I think it's very important to talk about mental resilience for kids. And prior to having my own child, or my daughter, who is 6 years old at the moment, it was really, I worked with adults in the field of psychology, and sooner or later we would hit the point that there would be some childhood trauma to be processed, or some beliefs around that time. And I thought, what would be wonderful if I could work with people or with kids at that stage, perhaps create that mental health earlier, rather than dealing with that like for the next 20 years.
Mm.
That was my original passion about it.
Yeah, nice. So I hear a lot from my clients, and like you just see a lot of like older generation people talk about kids just aren't as tough as they used to be, and that kind of thing for for various reasons. What is, I suppose, first of all, your perspective on that? We've all come up through our own childhood. We know from our experiences and what we've seen and everything. I grew up in an era where there was no social media. There was only blooming coloured TV came in my lifetime. That's how old I am. There were no things like mobile phones or anything like that. So it's a very different world now that your daughter's growing up to how we did. Sorry, I'm a lot older than you, so I shouldn't put you in the same category as me. But what's your perspective on are our children just naturally not as resilient as like your generation and my generation?
Hmm. I hear that a lot as well, in terms of that it's so different now, and why would children even need therapy, and why would we just over therapize them, just earlier in their life. But as you said, it's different generations, different exposure to the stimulation as well. So the kids are grown, like they're born with iPads in their hands sometimes. They see their parents with the phone in their hands from day one as well. So it's, for different generations, even hard to comprehend, how it feels to be, it's a different person. And then with that overstimulation, we also need to provide something where they can regulate those extra emotions and processing. So, for example, therapy for kids, it's the place where they can process what's happening, what's their perspective on that. And because they can't yet pinpoint in words or even understanding what's happening with them, to just have sense of it, the play therapy or art therapy, or children's therapy comes in place to provide that safe space where they can really figure out who are they and how they feel about it. So that's
So
the
you mentioned a good term there, overstimulation. Now, when I was growing up, I never heard of any child that was, I'll say, diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, etc., etc. And I speak to parents now that they're kind of almost like wishing that their child gets that label of ADD, ADHD, or whatever, so they can then go off to the the GP and get some medication to, kind of slow them all down. What you've got a lot more expertise in this field than I do. Mine are just purely observations and conversations. But with the overstimulation of the screen time and everything is like, oh, well, I'm doing that, but I'm watching this over here and I'm doing that. And I'm like, we're kind of conditioning our kids to a, like just a difference. Or when I was just playing in the sand or playing with Lego or, doing something like that. What's your take on? Obviously, we live in a time now where diagnoses and the there's just so much information out there that maybe there was just so much undiagnosed things before that now it's just, it is what it is. But I get the sense that we are also creating some of these issues as well.
Yes, definitely. It's a very valid point. And they say sometimes if you search hard enough, you'll find diagnosis for you nowadays. So if you really knew, according to some criteria,
Something wrong with all of us.
no, nothing's wrong. um, so the question was about how do we the overstimulation, and yes, even as adults, we barely have our focus span and attention span decreased, and we know by scrolling videos and things like this. So we just really can't focus as long as we used to be. So if for children when they're in their forming years of their mental health, that's even more like affecting them even more. And as you said, they're multitasking, but we know that we can't actually multitask. We still can do only one task at a time. So hence when a child is on the, for example, an iPad and you try to ask them something, they're just really distracted by many things. And what we do in therapy, we create that space where they can, when they can stop, for that very moment. There are no gadgets in the room. There are no toys, which again with these noises and things like this, which you can press the buttons. And that's the space where you don't slow down, but you have the opportunity to go, I would say, within in adult language and see, who you are and how you feel about it. And I think that's a great space to be for almost any child. And I often ask, do you need to be diagnosed to go into therapy? I believe every child will benefit from that. My daughter is not diagnosed, but she goes to play therapy on a regular basis, weekly, and she loves the session. I haven't seen one kid who doesn't.
Do you see the things that I'll say issues or observations in kids that you're working with? They're the same things really, but they just look different in adults.
Absolutely. That's why I think I refer, often to adults as well. It's just really, there are lots of parallels, if that's was the
Mm.
question, between adults and the kids.
I know one of the things that I find myself doing, I can't sit still, but I've conditioned myself that way to, there's only so much time. I've got to do, all of these things today because I set myself with high standards. If I go for a walk, I will never just go for a walk. I'm either having a meeting, I'm recording a couple of podcasts, I'm doing all those things, I'm talking to AI and, setting my day up for success, the future up for success, all that kind of thing. And then when it comes to, say, looking at the phone, like you said, with scrolling and everything, like the only reason I'm really on social media is because of my business. And you find yourself, you get sucked in and you're just flicking up like this. And it's like, what am I looking for? It's like, well, that's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish. Oh, that looks interesting. That's rubbish, that's rubbish, that's rubbish. So, oh, okay, now I need to go and do this. But I find that it does overstimulate me and it's conditioning me even more to do multiple things. But I don't do them all very well. And it's like, hang on, just put the phone away. Don't, so I only really search social media on the phone at certain times when I'm, posting and stuff. And I find that it's really distracting and it requires a really conscientious effort to stop it and say, hang on, no, I've got to get back into focusing on the one thing that needs to be done right now.
Yes. Well, you pretty much said the recipe. You're very resilient and resourceful, and you learned how to be around that distraction. So, sometimes we just have to put the phone down and condition ourselves to be present in the task that really is priority at the moment. And if somebody would like to learn that, it will be by your example. That with very first steps, for example, you set the timer for your phone and you can't touch it for, let's say, 15 minutes. Or even for some people, it will be 5 minutes because they're literally glued to the phone and scrolling
Yeah.
for. So just making the small steps first and to condition yourself the other way around. It probably will never get easier, as in, yourself, if you do get back to the, scrolling for the phone, it will condition you again to be there longer and
Mm.
longer and longer and being lost in that space. So
There's
yes.
just so much practice, isn't there? I did a podcast with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he did some work over in a monastery. I can't remember which country, but overseas somewhere. And he said it was a monastery where you're allowed to talk because some you're not allowed to. But he said you were only allowed to think and talk about what it was that you were doing in the moment. So you like they all had to like help out doing different things. So he used the example of carrots, and they were cutting up carrots for dinner or whatever. He said the only thing you were allowed to talk about was the carrot and like its color, the texture, what it was like to cut the carrot. So not the knife. You had to talk everything about the carrot. He said
Mhm.
if you're washing dishes, you can only talk about, say, the water and how it felt, and the soap and all of that kind of thing. And it sounds really silly, but it's like as an adult, we need to kind of slow our thinking down and just be present in the moment. And of course, I've used a carrot and dishwashing as really simple examples, but we need to do it with the most important humans in our life as well and be present for them as opposed to, yeah, what's that, Veronica? Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, what was that? Yeah, what was the problem today? Oh, right, right. And you've just said you've had your leg amputated or something. And so, oh, right, yeah, that must have hurt. And
That would be awful.
but we kind of need to recondition ourselves, don't we, from the
Yes.
distractions and everything, and yeah, just to be like really, really present.
And you gave the very good examples, to concentrate or to focus and try to describe or think of the things you're doing actually. And I think also to be present in the moment. Some people start from, it's very common exercise when, for example, they eat a grape and they try to stop and sense how does it taste, the
Mm.
texture of it, how long do I, chew on it, or things like this. So just really any task you can think of around you, you can describe and slow down and feel it in the present moment. Because sometimes people think they have to do something global, from Monday, I'm just completely Zen or something like this, or I did
Yes,
need to monastery to, or
yes. To
temples.
find myself or whatever. Yeah,
And that sometimes it takes place, maybe for full reset, however life is goes on. And especially with children, we have to find the time right here, right now.
that's
Sometimes if
right.
the children have to get out of the door and they're telling you, oh, I'm not ready. And again, maybe they are on iPad or they're still focused on something else or distracted. It's right there. And in that moment, we need those skills and how to, make a child to go out of the door. So yeah, it's not somewhere far, it's right here in front of us. Mm.
Yeah, I like the way you've said that. So, what would you say we could say to the parents out there, some tips to help our kids develop some more resilience and mental toughness, and maybe give us an idea of like ages where this is appropriate?
Uh, I'd like to think for parents it would be working with a child as well. A parent has to do the work on themselves too. And sometimes not just to put everything on the child, that it's a child's problem. For example, lack of attention. And in the moment, it's validating their emotions before you're teaching them something. And I give example again with this very common what parents experience. They ask something to do for a child, get ready, we are leaving in 5 minutes, we're getting late, and the child says no, or they're still drawing, now let me finish, something like this. And then a parent gets frustrated. They're looking at their time. Child couldn't care less. So in
Yeah.
that very moment, you have a few minutes and you can go completely ballistic and say, let's get out of the door and start screaming and things like this. And it just goes spirals. You know, everyone is worked up. Or you can really validate emotions that I really understand. That's very important for you to finish that drawing. But right now, we're going out of the door, or put your shoes on. And initially, a child might not even pay attention to that comment, but it will be if you are yourself regulated and you say that as a matter of fact, and the child knows that you follow through on your words. So they will start doing this. Yeah,
Yes.
so that would be example. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, good example. I think one of the things that I'm sure I was told this as a kid, brought up in the 70s, when I remember like my
I can't
first
believe that, but okay.
my first recollections of things where the child's upset
Mhm.
and crying, whatever. Oh, don't be sad. Oh, don't cry. Don't, whatever. And so from now that I've got the wisdom of adulthood, it's kind of like, Veronika, don't feel that way. It's not okay to feel sad. It's not okay to cry. You shouldn't cry. But like you said there about validating, and that's yeah, I do this with myself, right? I'm a man. I'm a masculine man, and I'm not afraid to tell people that I cry, and because I've cried on Bloomin' TV a number of times, um, and that doesn't make it wrong, and doesn't make me weak either. And so I think when you know that it's okay to have those feelings, and then teaching your kids, it's like it's okay. It's okay to have those feelings. It's then how you respond to those feelings, isn't it? To help, kind of like you're in a hole and now we've got to build a ladder to build their self-esteem out of that.
Absolutely. You open such a big conversation about acknowledging emotions and making sure it's okay. And for people understand that it's okay to experience a whole spectrum of emotions, not just on the positive side, because I believe, it was once the way of being always positive, always don't pay attention to negative emotions like anger or frustration, which is the opposite, as you said. Being able to cry, being able to be vulnerable as a masculine man makes you more masculine and strong rather than weak. It's not accepting your emotions makes you weak, because then you are in the cage of your own restrictions. Here, you experience yourself as a human. So that's what we provide to our children. And as you said, they used to say things like, don't be sad. And they would add, even, otherwise, I'll give you something to be sad about.
Yeah.
It's a cruel way to be around. So they would go even to the further, extremes. And so the adults would grow up as in not being expressed their emotions. So they would just walk around without being able to connect, to communicate, and being upset for no reason, with themselves first of all. So yes, again, validation of emotions, processing them, making sure they understand it's okay to be human as a child as well. That just makes them emotional intelligent.
Yeah, great point. How do you think we get our kids to speak to us? Now, what I mean here is, obviously you know very well the story of my Liv, and so she was bullied. And for those that aren't aware, she's not here anymore. She passed away, and she was unable to talk to me about it for 18 months. And after 18 months, her eating disorder was so entrenched in her mind, there was no way of turning back. And like I know, I mean, you know me pretty well. You know the sort of person I am, and can probably imagine the type of dad that I am. And in many ways, it breaks my heart that she didn't feel safe enough to be able to talk about these things like 18 months earlier, because she'd probably still be here and thriving in life, and you could take different decisions and so forth. But of course, there's nothing to be won in me beating myself up over what didn't I do, what could I have done differently. I'm just interested in like how we can foster that sense of confidence in our children to say when they're not okay.
Yeah. That's again very big conversation, and yes, I do know that you are an amazing dad, and then fostering that connection in children, it's it is again creating that space for them to learn about themselves first of all. And sometimes kids do not come to the parents to share their something that really bothers them, not because they can't open up for them, but because it could be the reason that they don't want to hurt the person they're closest with,
Mm.
or they're not sure, they don't know yet themselves what is going on for them, and they don't want to make people they care about, the people they love,
Mm.
worry about them
And
or
it is different with ages too, isn't it? Because like if you're like up to like your daughter's age and then, even up to double digits, I think it's very different to like
yeah.
Liv, she's like 13. Like she's a teenager. There's a whole bunch of other conversations going on at school that, I didn't tell my parents anything when I was a teenager. It's like they couldn't relate to me, so you just didn't tell them.
Yeah, sometimes kids, feel when they're becoming teenagers, the parent comes down off the pedestal, they had them on. And it's regardless of, how amazing this parent, they lose their authority at some stage, and the friends become the authority at that time. And that's unfortunate in terms of communicating the things like bothers them. But what we can do again and again is just really be there and try to be there for them as early as possible and create that emotional intelligence in them so they
Mm.
can make those decisions without telling us if that's the case. So they can be more resilient and understanding, okay, I can see these people telling me something, but that's not true because that's not who I am.
I don't want to liken kids to dogs, but every dog trainer that I talk to say that the dog's not the problem. The parents or the owner of the dog is normally the problem because they're not training the dog properly and so forth. Now, but again, in my case, I get blamed by medical professionals for Liv's death and her illness and all that kind of stuff, which is not right and irresponsible of them, but I'm man enough to be able to take anything. Um, I guess, am I right in saying that obviously as a parent, we have a big role in raising kids? If you decided to have kids, or maybe it wasn't a planned decision, but you've now got them, it is a rest of your life type of commitment. And if you're trying to outsource, one thing I learned was during COVID just how much of the education and teaching of our kids we outsource to other people
Mm.
that aren't necessarily awesome people, but they're teaching our children, like at school and everything I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm just interested in your perspective on that.
Outsourcing to people, yes, the school takes so much time and space in a child's life, and often parents do that. They do outsource and put everything in there. But we started our conversation from being connected with our children, from day one, and I understand it's hard sometimes practically in terms of work and
Yeah, both people working in the house and mm,
it's very, very hard. But even being adult, if we do have that undivided attention from our partner, even for 15, 20 minutes, we feel regulated and we can go on about life. But many, many people, they suffer not because they just don't spend 24/7 together, but because they don't have that undivided attention and the feedback with relevance in their conversation with the partner. Same with children. Sometimes they don't need all the time to be there, but they need maybe half an hour of complete presence when there is no phone, definitely. And you will listen to those conversations, even we think they are, well, silly or something like that. So those things, they will be having compounding effect on building that resilience in children. They know, okay, there is I have a special spot, and therapy often becomes for children that spot as well. They come and they know once a week there is a spot when that person present completely for me, and there is no judgment, and it's safe, and I can express myself the way I want it with limiting boundaries as well. So it just gives that opportunity. And I think outsourcing some of it is good, and especially in therapy, if you do know a therapist and you establish that connection, that's great help.
I think a lot of people outsource it to the devices and everything too, though, don't they? It's like, oh, you're being. I see it with parents when they bring their kids in here for like coaching and stuff, and they say, here, look at your iPad or look at this, and it's like, do you know what? The kid could do this exercise or coaching with you. Like, why
Yeah,
don't you let them do that? They'll really enjoy it. It's different, and they're moving their bodies, but
that's but I think as well, just what you said, that I just pictured myself as a parent, and I would say, that 80-20 rule. Sometimes you probably could use that gadget and say, okay, like I really need to be,
yeah.
let's go on the Zoom call. But you use that outsourcing to the gadget, the babysitting by the gadget, only for the cases when you really need to. But when there is no need, like they could join you for the session or something like this for the movement, you keep it present. So I would say that, because that's the reality. Mm.
What's the reality of like split families? I mean, that's more common now than like I didn't know anyone, none of my friends or people at school, I didn't know anyone that was divorced when I was
Mm.
growing up. Now it's unusual not to know somebody that doesn't have a split family. Does that just naturally, well, two questions maybe. First one, does it naturally make kids more resilient because now they've got more to deal with? Or does it have to be nurtured even more carefully because of the nature of it?
Good question. And to answer that, so imagine now the child, they have to be in two environments, and resilience could be more adaptability and flexibility, because they are two different houses, perhaps, new people, two
Mm,
extra sets of people. So they're more maybe adaptable. And would say it's like, people who do work in the communication or connecting with people, they know sometimes how to speak differently to different people. That's probably the skills they would develop more. And also there would be still this, every child still perceives their parents together, in their
mm,
mind. Their parents are their parents, regardless of who they leave, even for years. In their mind, it's still mom and dad. And there would be still this trying to connect them in their mind. So if we talk about resilience, that would be more adaptability and flexibility, and more emotional intelligence, how to make a peace that this is my parents separately, and also that's they are together for me. That would be that. And second question was about, I think I remember what I whispered.
Are
Yeah.
you testing my memory? It's okay. I think you've answered the question as a whole. I think I just broke it up into two bits, but um, yeah, well done. What would you say is, I thought maybe you've already answered it, but what would you say is the biggest challenge for parents today?
Well, there would be few. But so parents have, what challenges do they have? It's the time, it's, I guess, skills. They want to make sure they know how to be around child. It's also a little bit of worrying, if I am not enough as a parent, constantly, like a little bit self-criticism. And again, for the parents themselves, when we again started our conversation, we said that the parent has to work on themselves too, accepting
Um,
those emotions, being human, making mistakes is okay, and being able to tell a child, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I'm just a human. And perhaps it could be helping to create that transitioning from a parent being on pedestal, that's the, the best person I ever know when they're children, and when they
mm,
start bringing them down, that transition to make it perhaps smoother. When the child understands, okay, My parent is human. They might know things, but they might don't. But they are there for me. And perhaps also that children know that they can, I don't know how to put it, but they can't hurt you, so
Mm,
sometimes they're too scared, because they don't want to hurt parents and
mm.
tiptoeing around them without being able to express themselves. So this one of those challenges. It's time and being able to be present for them on a regular basis, to be consistent with that.
I'm going to get a bit of hate from this question, but how much do you think men need to step up?
Well, men do need to step up, and again, no, but men before they're stepping up, they have to make work on themselves as well. So it's interconnected process. It wouldn't occur to a father to step up before they didn't pose these questions to themselves. So there would be, if they're not, I would say, developing in that area, it wouldn't occur to them, oh, I need to step up. So it's again interconnected process. But studies shows after that definitely input from both parents, it's much better from input from one parent.
Yeah, I, as much as we've grown as a society and as many resources and everything that we have, still the majority of responsibility falls to the woman of the house to, probably put your career on hold or business on hold. You lose your body, you're then trying to get it back. Then largely the raising of the children goes to the mum. Then the kids go to school and it's managing the emotional side for the kids. That generally falls to the mum. You've then got to I'm generalizing here, but looking after the cleanliness of the home, the cooking of the meals, all of those things, and then massaging the ego of well, if it's a same-sex marriage, oh, sorry, different sex, heterosexual, massaging the ego of the poor man that's had a hard day, managing his emotional needs, and this is why, like, I see all the women that put themselves last, and I say you've got to give yourself permission to put yourself first. But it was also one of the reasons that I wanted to do it differently was I don't remember doing one thing with my dad as a kid, not one thing. And I'm like, I don't want my kids to never remember doing anything with me. So we did a role swap, and my wife at the time she went back to work, and I started my business, and yeah, I was the full-time at-home dad, and
Mm.
I loved that. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had anywhere near as much time with Liv.
Yes. And you said the big thing, it's these memories we create, these times that we can never take back as well, just that kind of connection with our children. And if when you talk about that, you swap the roles and stepped up as a
Mm,
stay-at-home dad, but that was as well your own decision and being better version of yourself, and you worked on
right.
yourself. So it's really on both parents to step up and start thinking, how can I be a better version, of human, so I can be present for my child. And
Yeah.
for women out there, with endless list of tasks, it is for them is the same thing, validating their emotions, validating their feelings, and understanding that they can start small. Like we put down our phone for 5 minutes, they can also put down their list for 5 minutes as a start, and for
Mm,
a man to step in for those 5 minutes, and then increasing that kind of time and effort, and
yeah.
to feel how it is to be in someone else's shoes.
And I know people can be listening to this and feel like Rob, you're being really harsh, but look, I'm a man. I can say what I see with my conversations with my male clients. I say, man, you've got to step up here. You've got to, you're not babysitting your kids on the weekend. They're your kids.
That's what they're
Some
saying.
more
I'm
time.
helping.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right. You're helping be a parent. Oh, okay. Good on you. Um, but one of the things that you're really good at, which I like to talk about, and women thinking, yeah, but I've just got so much. It's like, it becomes overwhelming. I get it. But but taking some time out for yourself, for your own self-care and so forth. And that's, I know that that's something really important for you to make sure that you do look after what it is that you're eating, and also in terms of the exercise that you're doing. And really just taking some time out for yourself is really, really important.
It's so important, Rob. And then, yes, I am an example who would make it priority to eat something well and to exercise. And I would say the key thing for that is to create the conditions, for this. What I mean by that, if I don't have time and I don't to go to the gym, to specific location and things like this, because before the exercise you need to get dressed to get there, etc., come back. So what I created is I figure out what exercise I can do at any time,
Yeah.
anywhere. Midnight or it'll be early morning when I have a chance. So I have a minimum of exercise I can do. So in order to sustain the consistency, so you can do
Yes.
something. And when you feel, I don't know, good or have more time, you can do that. So it's just creating those conditions for you and make it as a priority. Because I know if I don't exercise and don't eat well, I don't think I am a good person to communicate with in those times.
Yeah,
It's
that's
because
right, because you feel really crappy and you're not giving back to you. You're not filling your
Mhm.
own cup back up, are you? So you're just like, man, I'm running on empty here. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I'm just grumpy. I do that because it's such an important part of who I am.
Yes, it's just must. Mm.
Yeah. So, Veronika, this has been an awesome conversation, and I feel like we're not even scraping the surface yet. If people would like to get in touch with you, well, let's talk about a couple of things. Because I was on your very first episode of The Psychology of Us. So if people want to watch that TV show, how do they get access to that?
So they can watch it on Channel 31 twice a month, or they can go to the website psychologyofus.com, and the recorded episodes are uploaded there, so they can watch it there.
Nice. Watch episode 1. Make sure you do that, everybody.
Yes, make sure it was the best.
And then how else can if people want to work with you? You said before we hit record here that you can do like a free assessment or something like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
I can do free assessment for people who are interested to learn a little bit more, or they would like to, embark on the journey of therapy for their children. So 30-minute assessment or phone conversation.
And
And
anywhere in the world doesn't
anywhere in the world, it's starkeystherapy.com.au.
kids kids are kids. It doesn't matter
These
whether
are
they've
kids,
got a
yes. Play
.com or
therapy
a
is
.au.
international therapy, so it's accepted in many countries and very effective.
So I'm going to ask two more questions, but the you said earlier that the most of the resources are coming out of the US. So is the US the leading country here in terms of child therapy, or is it often the European countries that are leading in
Yes.
some of this stuff?
Yeah, thank you. It is European countries, as in UK is
Okay.
still one of the leading centers, but US as well, and it's widely used as a mainstream therapy in US and UK. But we use the marketing and promotional materials from US because they're just very good at putting together all the information in the language that is relevant to parents.
So here in Australia, has it just not been recognised as a big enough, I suppose, issue to put the funding and resources to it?
So here it has been over a decade play therapy, but people would bring to just let's say traditional psychologists, which play therapist is psychologist, but with their training in play therapy, and it's getting there, and there is it's accepted in Australia as a therapy, but it's just lots of issues with funding. But otherwise, it's becoming mainstream as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Veronika, I've got one more. I'm going to give you the final word in a second, but um, the work that you're doing, I thank you for it. Obviously, you're seeing it in real time as you see your daughter grow up with the knowledge, and you've got somebody to test it out, and your husband too. He's about the same age, to be able to, add such a big impact globally on our children, and with your TV show as well. So I want to thank you for all that work that you are doing, and I wish you all the success in how you become more successful in this space, because you're really making an impact and having a difference. So I'm going to give you the final word. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received. Wow, that's a great question. It takes me a minute to
I,
think about
I did say I wouldn't ask you any questions you couldn't answer, but
it. No, but that's you, and that's great. Yeah, so let's say what the first thing pops up in my mind is it's all the answers are within. It is true. And if I want to make any decisions externally, I'm going internally. So that would be that advice for me personally. Yeah, to know myself. And that's how I create that state and make the best decisions for me and others around me.
yeah, fantastic. I love that. So I'm going to put all of your links below in the description here so people can get in contact with you. Veronika, thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Bye bye.